This is Sybert signing into Tiberium Wars for something. I don't know what this is. I think this is the finals of a tournament, but I don't actually know that for sure. The map is Destination in the bottom left-hand corner as the Cyan GDI. It's Shocktrepet. In the top right-hand corner as the red Scrin going crane first. This is a pretty big map. It's BikeRushOwnz. We will have to see, does the crane first pay off? In most cases, it doesn't. But it's a big map. It's an unusual map. You do have this, like, kind of two green fields split, and then way in the corners you've got additional green fields next to EMP control centers. Looks like the frame rate keeps taking a hit, which is not ideal, but I think that might be a map problem, either a loading problem with the game, like the first time you load up the map it lags, or this is just a map that is not well optimized for the game. One Tiberium spike grabbed by Shocktrepet. I believe this was a double elimination tournament. By the way, this is the Marching Forward tournament or event, which I think was a double elimination and it resulted in a best of 9. But so often, tournaments will start one way and then end a way that was unplanned. So we're just playing this by ear. I have no idea if this is supposed to be best of 9 or if this is like a double elimination extended series where one of these players has to win 2 series, so it's like a best of 9 and then a best of something else to follow it up. Who knows? Sometimes at the last minute, it's late for both players and they decide to play like a best of 7 or something to finish things off. Like, anything could happen. Anything is possible. Lots of APC engineer shenanigans were attempted. 3 different APC engineers, only one of them really got through grabbing this Tiberium spike, and at this point, it almost certainly has paid for itself, but not paid for the other APC engineers. Those seeker tanks ate up those APC engineer attacks and pretty much shut everything down. First field almost gone, half gone for both players, a little bit more than half gone for BikeRushOwnz as he did go triple refinery on that main field. And like I said, this is a big map. This map makes all of the other Tib Wars maps feel pretty small. I feel like, I don't know, but I feel like with these diagonal cross spawns, this is a much longer drive distance than Tournament Rift. And I don't know that, I haven't like measured it or anything. And it might be actually the same, but it feels like a much longer drive distance. And, well, in this case, the 2 players are expanding towards each other. So we do have a little bit of convergence there, potentially in the bottom right-hand corner of the map. And I guess there are also these, like, fields here. I don't know. I don't think anything got destroyed there. I'm pretty sure that it was there at the beginning of the game. But there is a lot of Tiberium fields on this map. There's a lot of space on this map. Crane now going to be coming down for Shocktrepet. Could be for a bit of a tech move out, as he is most likely going to be going for a command post and then his tier 3 tech. And then eventually, you know, railguns, juggernauts, mammoth tanks, something like that to finish this game out. BikeRushOwnz, on the other hand, he's loving this tier 1 assault, rolling in with a couple of seeker tanks. I don't think that's going to necessarily be enough to do, actually, okay, there are the Predator tanks finally pulling back to respawn. Buzzer Swarm gets called in directly on the reinforcements, and that has to feel good for BikeRushOwnz. A morale victory, excuse me, not a moral victory, a victory in terms of morale. And, ooh, this APC engineer is not going anywhere. There's even a sell-off of a refinery just to get the Buzzer Hive, or the Buzzer Squad out there to potentially kill off that engineer a little bit more quickly. Wasn't really needed. MCV under a little bit of threat. It could pull back. There isn't a whole lot of anti-air here, although there are some rocket squads, and while it's lifting off the ground, it will take some pretty heavy damage. BikeRushOwnz is going to try and defend with the units that he has, and he should be able to do it. Rocket squads inside of the building are going to make this a little bit harder for Shocktrepet to break, and he is really committed to try and get the kill on this drone ship. There's a small chance that he will, but I don't think Bike Rush lets him have it. Now, there are a couple of rifleman squads to try and snipe down the engineer. They don't get the kill on the engineer, it looks like, and that's an instant heal on that drone ship. So this entire attack pretty much for nothing as BikeRushOwnz cleans up all of those forces. And that's not necessarily the end of the... Well, never mind. This doesn't look ideal. That's not necessarily the end of the line. Ooh, unfortunately for Shocktrepet, taking a big ton of damage on his MCV, a lot of damage on his MCV. As if Shocktrepet had followed this up with a faster expansion, if he had followed this up with a tech switch, he was going like double airfield with mammoth tanks behind it, then losing the Predator tanks isn't necessarily that big of a deal. But he just gave away a chunk of his army, and he essentially got nothing for it. And another couple of units just disappearing there, not getting a lot of value for it. He maybe got a harvester, although both of these harvesters are escaping with lots of Tiberium, so even if he got one harvester, again, not really worth it. Force fields have been purchased by BikeRushOwnz, so his Annihilator tripods have that much more health, and that harvester is not long for this world as it gets eliminated, and the MCV has established itself over at a potential third base location, but it is going to get destroyed by these Annihilator tripods as they close the distance on this MCV, and the forces of Shocktrepet are a little bit too far out of position. He is almost not even concerned with saving that MCV at this point. He is just willing to let it go and to let the refinery fall as well. At the same time, BikeRushOwnz happily established a third refinery or third base, a whole series of refineries over there at this third field, and is happily harvesting away, which is going to fuel his economy pretty big for the next couple of minutes of this game, and also buy him enough leeway to get out a fourth refinery very soon. Now, we have seen a couple of situations where the buzzers get caught up as they're running a merry chase after something, and they end up not being able to actually kill off the engineer. In this case, it won't really matter. There isn't that much of value over here. He forces the sell-off of a refinery that doesn't matter. If he got the tech, that would be nice, but he doesn't get the tech. He doesn't get capture and sell-off. That did pull back Bike Rush's army. Buzzers get called in, but immediately shot down by the Rifleman squad. A couple of Gunwalkers going to be giving themselves away. No, they're going to be phased by Bike Rush and used for crushing, and in this case, Shocktrepet is just letting it happen. He's not trying to pull anything back to salvage his forces or try and make something out of this situation. His entire army is pretty much just getting crushed here. He does kill one Annihilator tripod, and for some reason these dev tanks aren't actually participating in this fight, but other than that, he's just losing basically everything on the ground. His MCV has been rebuilt. He did have a crane behind that, so he did always have an open build queue to finish teching up or whatever. But in this case, he doesn't have a whole lot of ground army to speak of, and he has a whole lot of scrin about to be forced down his throat, as on this map, it's looking like the destination is a victory for Bike Rush. Bluestahili has been defeated, a.k.a. Shocktrepet. Both of these guys are indeed smurfing, so Asmondiaz is BikeRushOwnz. But that will do it for game number 1 of this series. How far will it go? What will we see? Who even knows? But we've got some new maps to check out. That was one of them, and I think we have some more to get to. But first, it's game number 2, which takes us to Tournament Beach in the north as the red nod. It's BikeRushOwnz. In the south as the cyan GDI. It's Shocktrepet. Now this might actually be game number 3, not game number 2. I don't know, because I tried to load up the replay labeled as game number 2, which was on Pipeline Problems, and the replay is essentially 0 seconds long, so the game starts to load and then it immediately goes to the end screen. Aha, that's why it's crane first, because there's blue tib in the corners that I didn't even see. This is actually, wow, this is almost like an easier version of Pipeline Problems. So I don't know if that was a crashed replay, I don't know if it was a bugged replay, or I don't know if it was a mistake and they were actually supposed to play this map, but somehow the replay ended up getting saved anyways. Who even knows? Who even cares? As long as the games are entertaining, we can, I guess, forget the rest of it. And this garrisonable structure Has quite a look to it. Kind of reminds me of that that Air Force Academy. You know the one I'm talking about, the spiky one. Kind of reminds me of that. I don't think it's supposed to be. Yeah, I think it's a little bit too late to take cover there, bud. And so 3 pretty prominent garrisonable structures on the map, and this, which looks like a garrisonable structure on the map, but actually isn't. And then, yeah, a couple of tib spikes for each player, at least 1 for each player. And blue tib. All the things you need for a good map. First couple of bikes going to be coming on out for BikeRushOwnz, and more refineries after that. So double refinery on the blue to quickly hoover all of that up, and then double refinery on the green. And, you know, GDI versus Nod, but BikeRush is placing his refineries like it's Nod versus Nod. And as you can see, very nice split on these refineries, not so much these ones. As, ooh, if you see a single buggy, even though it's only a couple of minutes into the game, you have to be worried that somehow BikeRushOwnz has gotten out to a tib catalyst missile that quickly. Although also with how long the vision lasts after a unit leaves, you know, 5 minutes later, someone is still able to see your base, just about. Is that shredder turret animation, like, slightly different? Is that something they changed for this map? Because that looks more intense, more aggressive of a shredder turret. Buggy still going for the scout, and these refineries are placed so closely that that is just begging to be clicked to death, so much so that we're going to swing back through BikeRush's base. He actually sells off the Tier 2 just after getting up his Tier 3, so he doesn't have any plans for air towers or venoms or anything like that for his Nod forces. Armory does get placed down there, and I assume comp armor is going to be the choice. Could be a big man spam Tier 1 tank kind of a composition. Not a bad idea at all. Although sniper teams being built, you have to give it to Shocktrepet for bringing the sniper teams. All right, where's the catalyst missile? Second MCV. There's the chemical plant. Where's the catalyst missile? I missed it. It's over here. I guess he just rebuilt these 2 refineries. Yeah, he's getting his harvesters all healed up. Lost probably 12 harvesters, 18 refineries. Every refinery on the map simultaneously explodes, even the ones on BikeRush's side of the map. That's a looks versus feels episode for you. 2 pit bulls going down to the obelisk because they're trying to go for a bit of harvester harassment, and I do like this little rocket infantry force, but I don't know that it's long for this world. A couple of shredder turrets will help weaken this army considerably, but without any armor to really punch through those base defenses, this infantry force is going to be hard-pressed to actually get anything done. And BikeRushOwnz, with this multi-MCV play, we can expect to see even more obelisks getting placed down, as the pit bulls of Shocktrepet do get some nice damage off on these harvesters, but they're not getting confirmed kills. They're just hanging out in the back, firing willy-nilly, not really doing too much of importance. Meanwhile, BikeRushOwnz is getting obelisk kills on his opponent's harvesters. 2 harvesters going down, and, well, goodbye additional refinery as that gets sold off and eliminated there as tanks find their way into the main base of BikeRushOwnz. They're going to be going for the Tier 3 tech, and they could be going for the harvesters as well, as those pit bulls are stealth revealing quite nice. But there's an engineer going to be popping on out of that Hand of Nod relatively soon to try and keep alive this Tier 3 tech. 1 engineer goes down, but the threat is pretty much eliminated. You don't even need to rebuild that engineer. He does it anyways, and it's almost healed back up to full health at any rate. Harvester goes for the crush of a couple of Black Hand members, and, well, I guess the obelisk is going to be doing the help for the Black Hand members, firing away at that harvester as this Scorpion tank gets the final blow on 1 harvester, but this is just going incredibly poorly for Shocktrepet. He is getting a little bit of a strike back, killing off 2 or 3 harvesters as they make their way back to BikeRush's base, but BikeRush sort of has harvesters to spare. So unless Shocktrepet really starts making good headway, he's going to be finding it hard-pressed to contend with BikeRush as this game continues on. More and more obelisks going down for BikeRushOwnz, and he has lost 4 or 5 harvesters in the last minute or so, But I don't know that that's really enough. At the same time, Shocktrepet may actually be doing to BikeRush what BikeRush is doing to him as he takes his 3rd/4th field, if we can really count this as a taken field by Shocktrepet. He's on the other side of the map, going to be dropping down additional refineries and harvesters here. And if he was Sonic Emitter pushing this base, then we could actually say something a little bit more positive about him. Stealth Tank gets some good shots off on those Orcas. Going to get a second volley on that Orca and cleans up 2 Orcas in 1 strike. Sniper team's getting some nice shots off on those militant squads, but I don't think that's the victory that's going to win you the game. As the action continues on the left side of the map, but it's mostly just infantry fighting against infantry. More and more Orcas going down as BikeRush targets more Orca after Orca with his stealth tank before escaping away, and that is a double vet stealth tank on the verge of going heroic. Oh, can he snag the kill on the Juggernaut? That would be sick as the Orcas respond to the front line, and they're going to be trying to clear these avatars. Goodbye, 1 avatar. It gets eliminated. The other ones do make it back to the saving grace of the obelisk and those SAM sites. Shocktrepet has been pushed back at the current moment. Unfortunately, he's not doing like this multi-MCV, you know, double sonic emitter in your base, splashing down your face. It's 1 sonic emitter at a time. And I mean, hey, it cleans up power plants, and that does help, but that is not the game-winning move that you're looking for there. Sonic Emitter may have actually cleaned up the stealth tank back here on this side of the map, as the disruption towers are stealthing much of this base, keeping it away from the Sonic Emitter, keeping Shocktrepet from doing any more damage. That's where that stealth tank went. It is not fully heroic. I don't think he can really chance firing off at these Orcas unless they're heading back home. Another stealth tank going to be going for a kill on some harvesters. Also going to be trying to tango with some zone troopers, which is not something I recommend. Juggernaut starting to wail away at that base, and that is one area that the GDI player can look for a bit of an advantage, is with those Juggernauts, those heavy bombardment units, and he can do some real damage as the GDI player. BikeRushOwnz, he's run out of steam. He's run out of direct cash that he has easy access to. Honestly, I thought he was going to be able to take over this field, but he simply has not been able to. His obelisks have been getting somewhat stuck, and the Sonic Emitter fires off. No! The stealth tank barely gets out of range, and that is an incredibly powerful stealth tank as it re-stealths. There's the reveal, and the Orcas, can they get the kill? They do get the confirmed kill as the Orcas explode in midair, and the stealth tank goes down. That feels good. Eliminating a fully heroic stealth tank, you don't have to deal with it anymore. You don't have to worry about it. Yeah, there's another stealth tank roaming around the map, but that guy's not fully heroic. That has to feel very good for Shocktrepet. Unfortunately for Shocktrepet, losing that Avatar Husk, and BikeRushOwnz has repositioned one of his MCVs, one of his potential multi-MCVs. Yeah, he's got at least 2 of them out on the map. And Shocktrepet, is he going to be able to make headway against BikeRush, while BikeRush is directly pushing the expansion of Shocktrepet? BikeRush rushing in with so many harvesters. Is he legitimately just going to harvest away at this field? Because that would be kind of hilarious if that was his actual plan. Harvester after harvester going down as Shocktrepet's Orcas clean up force after unit before trying to escape the forces of BikeRush. Avatars, will they be stopped by the combination of Juggernauts and Sonic Emitters? It's possible, but it doesn't seem likely, as there aren't enough Sonic Emitters. If there were 2 down at once, maybe the hope would stay alive, but as more Avatars march to the front lines, I think it's going to be hard for Shocktrepet to hold this position. And if the west flank falls, will he be able to hold on any further in this game? BikeRushOwnz repositioning. He really does need some artillery to deal with this base a little bit more cost effectively. And the Sonic Emitters are actually doing some good damage. I think, was it? Yeah, it must have been Confessor grenades impacting them, causing them to fire upon their friends. And Sonic Emitters have indeed pushed BikeRush back in his original main base. It kind of shored him up a little bit, pushed him back from his expansions, and forcing him to just go directly, or to defend directly his main base. Orca's showing up once again for Shocktrepet. Can he clear out the avatars? If he could clear out the avatars, then there isn't much strength left in the forces of BikeRushOwnz. It's mostly a lot of infantry, which can be dealt with, and BikeRush has been defeated. His assault did not work. I thought with that wave of avatars he was going to be able to break that position, but no. Shocktrepet stands strong. The sonic emitters and the juggernauts doing some serious work for him, and in game number 2 or game number 3, whatever it is, Shocktrepet strikes back. Let's see what happens in the next map, which takes us to Tournament City, which I think has had a hole blasted right through the middle of it. In the south, as the Cyan Scrin, it's Shocktrepet. And in the north, as the red GDI, it's BikeRushOwnz. What is the score? What game is this? I don't know, because another game that was labeled as Game 4, I loaded that one up, and it did the same thing that game number 2 did. So I think there are some bugged replays in this pack, which is unfortunate for us. I do not have the time or the energy at this point to hunt down the correct ones, or hunt down fixes, or contact someone to, like, edit the replay files to try and fix it. It's weird because the custom maps are all loading fine, the games on the community-made maps, but the ones on, like, the official maps, like Pipeline Problems, Tournament Arena, which are 2 of the ones we've missed, those aren't working, so who knows? Anyways, still going to be bringing you some Bike Rush Shocktrepet action, which has not disappointed up to this point, so this Descent Rush, however, I think will be disappointing to Shocktrepet. And, well, he does get the kill on both of those both of those rifleman squads, but I think BikeRushOwnz, who has had to deal with this a lot in Kane's Wrath, is going to be absolutely fine here. Double rifleman inside of the APCs is a great first step. If you lose the Tib Spike, it's not the end of the world, but obviously you want to keep that alive as long as you possibly can. And this is not enough descents to jump on the APCs like that. You can try, but it's just not going to work. Now, of course, behind this, we have to keep in mind that Shocktrepet is getting a sneaky quick expansion in the bottom right-hand corner of the map. We saw the outpost or the emissary, whatever it's called, heading out early on in the game. And this water sure is loud. And just like a sheet of ice flowing down the concrete. But we did see him take a sneaky expansion there in the bottom right-hand corner of the map, and also he's getting a portal and an additional engineer, so he may be going for a extra sneaky engineer Tib Spike cap. And I do like this sort of meteor impact in the middle of the map. That's a lovely little touch there, and I don't know what this is. This is a ramp down to somewhere. It just goes to nothing. It just deforms the texture that's up here, and that's it. But anyways, I don't know that that's necessarily the point of the map, is to look at the tiny details that aren't supposed to really be visible. A couple of pit bulls going to be heading in for BikeRushOwnz. Can he really get anything done? There are enough seeker tanks here to push this back, but pred tanks and APCs may be enough to help break the defense of Shocktrepet. Photon cannon going to be nice. He's grabbed this Tib Spike, which is always nice for him, that extra 25 creds a second. And BikeRushOwnz is actually behind in terms of economy. He may not be on this main field. He did indeed go for 3 refineries. He's got more harvesters. But when you count in the expansion, Shocktrepet is actually ahead. And at this point, BikeRushOwnz now realizes that although one dev tank almost given away, the dev tank got a couple of good shots off, but that was pretty much a gift to BikeRushOwnz from Shocktrepet. And when you're Scrin, you want to keep those punchy units alive, those units that can actually deal a good amount of damage, because Seeker Tanks, Gunwalkers, not necessarily the best at dealing with GDI armor, although certainly Descents are going to help out quite a lot with that. Potentially a Photon Cannon going to be coming down as well. No, it's right into a Storm Column. Forget your Photon Cannon. We got Tier 3 base defenses, baby. We don't need no Photon Cannons. BikeRushOwnz is still going to try and make this work. He may be able to get a couple of kills, but surely he can't make this attack work, right? Like, oh, the stasis locking down 5 of those Predator tanks. He was going to be able to eat up those dev tanks that much more quickly, but he may have to settle for a little bit of a slower kill. Where are those avatars or those tripods? They seem like they're kind of late to the party as another dev tank goes down. Shock Trooper's a little bit late to respond and a little bit of a weird angle. They're kind of getting split up there, running around the forces of BikeRush, and that was a great stasis, but where's the follow-up from Shocktrepet? He doesn't have anything there planted around those Predator tanks to get the kills, to, you know, get the guaranteed kills after they come out of that stasis, and the battle marker up there is actually just infantry walking through Tiberium. There isn't even any harassment going on in Shocktrepet. He spent a lot of cash very early on, but I think the fact is he lost out on some potential opportunities to really crush BikeRush's army. And we'll have to see which way the wind blows, as I think an engineer just got sniped. No, the engineer is actually up there being protected by those rifleman squads. The buildings were indeed cleared, though, which makes this engineer cap a little bit more difficult, but it's really just delaying what BikeRush is doing. It's not entirely stopping it, and getting the kill on the engineer would be amazing, because, I mean, of course, Shocktrepet already has the cashback bonus, but if he could have gotten that, if he could have made that Tib Spike capture cost an extra 500 credits, that would definitely be worth it. He may still get it with the tripods. No, he barely misses the opportunity to snipe that engineer. A couple of shock troopers, literally like 3 squads of shock troopers. Yeah, this is not necessarily going to work out very well. Watchtower is going to be forcing those shock troopers back, and oh, actually, there's the engineer heading out for Shocktrepet. Going to be recapturing that Tib Spike, so BikeRushOwnz only held it for a very short amount of time, and as the game goes on, holding on to those Tib Spikes for longer and longer is going to be more and more important. BikeRushOwnz has a great army, and I can only assume that he is building railguns, because if not, then his great army won't stand up to very much of this late-game scrim. 5 tripods and some shock troopers, but the Devastator warships are what's going to help Shocktrepet break the front line of BikeRushOwnz. And BikeRushOwnz, once those railguns kick in, he is going to have a ton of damage output, so he will be able to break down those tripods extremely quickly if he can kind of separate them from each other, take them down 1 or 2 at a time. Engineer gets the recapture as BikeRushOwnz takes back the Tiberium Spike that was originally Shocktrepet's. So they're having a big fight over that Tib Spike, which, again, over time, it does become important. APC trying to escape away, and it looks like BikeRushOwnz isn't building an additional engineer, which is good for him. Railgun's still on the way, about 80-90% done, as 1 Devastator warship gets eliminated, but another 2 or 3 are still here just waiting for some base defenses to go down. They're just chewing away at the refineries for the current moment. Railguns have finished up, so let's see if BikeRushOwnz's army can stand up to the firepower of Shocktrepet. Big group of Predators collapsing in on the right side, but there's the phase going off for Shocktrepet. Can he get the crushes? He's keeping the tripods together, so he's not necessarily optimizing the crushing path of those tripods, and everything else gets destroyed. BikeRushOwnz rolls over the army of Shocktrepet, and other than the phased tripods, which are having a hard time actually killing anything at the current moment, there isn't much of an army left for Shocktrepet. BikeRushOwnz may actually want to just pull back to base defenses and make another couple of passes with his Firehawks, try and take down those Devastator warships, and then draw the rest of Shocktrepet's forces into the base defenses. Firehawks come in for another swing. Both Devastator warships go down. The phase has worn off, and the Railgun Predator tanks chew through more and more tripods. Goodbye, Annihilator tripods. BikeRushOwnz going to be losing a couple of Predator tanks, which is certainly not good, but he's getting the guaranteed kills on the tripods. He killed a Harvester as well, which always feels good. And, of course, now he can draw the Skrin forces into the base defenses, into the watchtowers, and get out some riflemen on top of it. The expensive army of Shocktrepet has largely been defeated, and now he's hunting for that Tier 3. No sell-off The Tier 3 goes down the old-fashioned way as those Firehawks fly across the map. They don't strato-fighter. They fly across the map the manual way and drop the bombs. No cancel, no sail by Shocktrepet. Things aren't feeling very good for Shocktrepet. It feels like BikeRushOwnz is playing this game out a little bit better than Shocktrepet. Getting some free damage, some extra shots off on those shock troopers as Shocktrepet retreats full on. Harvester going for some long-distance harvesting as he tries to steal some Tiberium from Shocktrepet. I don't think that is really going to work out for him. Shocktrepet maintains control of both Tiberium spikes, though, and BikeRushOwnz is out of cash. He has effectively been out of cash for the last couple of minutes. Could go ahead and sell off 3 of his existing 5 refineries and keep just 1 on each field and try and roll the rest of it into an army. He is managing to long-distance harvest some of this blue Tiberium. Very, very small amount, even going to both players. It's not a full load of blue Tiberium between the two of them. Power plant's getting targeted down, really just trying to avoid those plasma missile batteries from shooting down his Firehawks. They are so powerful. Just a couple of volleys doing some big, big damage. All right, this might be it for either one of these players. I think BikeRushOwnz has the advantage if Shocktrepet fights into BikeRush's base defenses. Shocktrepet does have, like, a fairly powerful army if everything fires, but if it gets picked apart, if it's against base defenses, and, I mean, Harvesters are even going to be absorbing a lot of these shots here and a lot of the damage, going for some crushes, and this actually is going to separate out the tripod. So now this tripod gets eliminated, and the rest of the army of Shocktrepet, what is it even doing? Where is it going? These Harvesters are just absorbing so much damage. Storm Riders are nice, but are they going to be enough to break the back of this assault? They're already taking so much damage. BikeRushOwnz, the Firehawks, assaulting Shocktrepet earlier in this game and really cutting down Shocktrepet's answers to this potential attack. BikeRushOwnz doing some good damage to the forces of Shocktrepet, and Shocktrepet with the phase, with the stasis, locking down a corner of BikeRush's army, but is it enough? I feel like if he has nothing to actually kill off those forces, he's just delaying the inevitable. Goodbye, Gravity Stabilizer. No more Storm Riders for you, as Shocktrepet holds still a portion of the map, but not with any strength in his hand. His grip is weakening. A couple more volleys of rockets are going to finish off these Storm Riders, as Storm Riders so close to death, exploding above the forces of BikeRush. The refinery's getting targeted. BikeRushOwnz also trying to eliminate the second Gravity Stabilizer, the power plants as well. Another Devastator warship shows up. And I mean, the Devastator warship could be difficult to deal with, but if that's the only thing you got, then the base trade is not going to go in your favor. Shocktrepet looking to fight to the last man and rocket, but I don't know that it's going to be a fight he could ever win. Not with these armies. Although, there's almost one power plant left. Harvester going for the scout, I assume? Does he just want vision to confirm how close to death he really is? Perhaps. Storm Riders are going to try and go for the base trade. It is a long shot, but I guess technically it could work. Although as pit bulls get produced by BikeRushOwnz, it's becoming a longer and a longer of a shot. Harvesters just getting eliminated. One APC went down, and Descents would be a potentially great response to this, but sniper teams, riflemen, APCs, although I think all the APCs got cleaned up. Sniper team and riflemen make the Descents a difficult thing to actually work. And BikeRushOwnz, well, he doesn't have a lot of forces left, but I think he'll have enough to break Shocktrepet, as this Devastator warship is continuing to shell away. That'll do it. Shocktrepet, without any real forces left to fight against BikeRushOwnz, drops out of Tournament City. A good fight for him, for sure. Had some nice moves, but really BikeRushOwnz in the last 3 to 4 minutes of that match was in much more control than the first part of that game. And that will do it for this game. We still have at least one more replay to jump into, which takes us to Tournament Coastline. On the left, as the Cyan Skrin, crane first with a fast expand, it's Shocktrepet. And in the bottom right-hand corner, as the crane first, red nod, it's BikeRushOwnz. Although, no fast expand from him, so it's going to be double refinery. Hey, if your opponent's not nod, you don't have to worry about those refinery placements. All right, Shocktrepet, he's going for the very fast forward expansion. We've seen this work a number of times, especially when you're Skrin versus, I think it works versus GDI or not. I'm trying to think of the game that I'm thinking of. I don't actually remember if it was versus GDI or not. I also don't remember if it was Shocktrepet who did this or if it was Shocktrepet. It actually might have been Shocktrepet versus Shocktrepet. And it did work out, though. The fast expand to the forward field worked out in that case. Now, of course, this is the bigger field, so you harvest it first, you clean this one up, and then you can expand backwards to a much safer expansion, which is not the traditional expansion route, but I love this placement of these refineries, by the way. But it is a viable strategy, and we'll have to see if it works out. BikeRushOwnz, okay, there's his MCV. I was really worried for a moment there. He is actually going to be doing virtually the same thing. Slightly different flavor of the same cake, the same build order. Just a little bit of a variant. Double refinery on that new expansion field and no war factory, so super late war factory by comparison to a normal game. But in this case, we'll see if it works out. Shocktrepet may just want to be holding the line here until he gets to tripods and Devastator warships. That's sort of the recipe that he's looking to have. Maybe even a couple of storm columns just to help him hold the line. But you want to get up to that tier 3. You want to get into a place where you can march across the map and crush your opponent's base in basically one fell swoop. Because otherwise, with your base being this broken up, if your opponent goes for something aggressive or they manage to sneak in, you may actually find yourself kind of cornered on this front field only. So a lot of times it is more survival mode on this front field, but we'll have to see. Shocktrepet going to be pushing into BikeRush's expansion. Of course, BikeRush's expansion a little bit later, but he was a little bit more developed by the time he decided to actually set this up. Lightning Spike and Seeker Tanks going to be targeting down these harvesters, but it does pull to the far side, trying to avoid the Lightning Spike, but also avoid the Seeker Tanks, as even a Tib Silo going down, trying to just block off every possible path. And BikeRushOwnz does indeed keep that one harvester alive. The rest of his forces targeting down that Lightning Spike. And there's the stasis on the War Factory, on the Scorpion tanks, as two harvesters are extremely low on health. If only Shocktrepet could get them. He's having an extremely hard time actually getting the confirmed kills, and he will not get them. Two harvesters so close to death, and I fear that that attack going that way does not bode well for Shocktrepet. The game is different if he kills those two harvesters. It is very different. But now that BikeRushOwnz kept all of that stuff alive, Shocktrepet spent a bunch of cash and a bunch of units trying to kill those harvesters, and ultimately got delayed mining as the only thing he won in that engagement. He really is going to have to play defensive. Now, a couple of things going for Shocktrepet. He's got his third base up and running, that refinery rocking and rolling, those refineries. And he's got that Tib Spike. He got a little bit of a sneaky capture. I did indeed miss it, but BikeRushOwnz does not have his own Tib Spike captured up here. In fact, this Buzzer Squad may have actually gotten a kill on an engineer that we also missed. So things are going okay for Shocktrepet. But killing off those two harvesters, that would have definitely bought him the kind of security that he needed to hold the line more comfortably. BikeRushOwnz expanding backwards as well. Here we go with the base creep and, of course, the transferring of the harvesters from the original main field up to the new, fresh third field. 2 tripods, 2 Devastator warships. Is this actually going to be enough? This feels a little bit potentially premature, as Shocktrepet doesn't actually have a lot of forces. He merely has artillery, which in this case is actually allowing him to do some good damage. But, okay, yeah, so he does turn around. He does not commit into this attack, which I think would be a little bit foolhardy, but I love that. A little bit of a poke and a pretty safe, somewhat conservative poke as well. Just doing a bit of damage when he can and then backing off. I love that kind of a move from Shocktrepet. Going to be a couple of stealth tanks. I know there are more stealth tanks roaming around the map for BikeRushOwnz. There was the one there in the top right-hand corner of the map. And he's going to be going for the signal transmitter immediately. He needs just 1 volley from both of those, and that will do it. So goodbye, signal transmitter. It's going to take a little bit more to get the technology assembler, but we'll have to see if he can do it with a couple of sneaky volleys. At the same time, Shocktrepet is base creeping storm columns right to the front line, and they are going to be covering his Devastator warships and his planetary assault carrier. No more packs, as he did lose the signal transmitter. It looks like he also lost the Tier 3. So this is going to be completely cutting off some options from Shocktrepet. He's really going to have to pull something out of this attack to really make it worth it. And these 2 harvesters are going to be going down to the stealth tanks, as 3 more harvesters are going to be under threat to BikeRush's forces. At the same time, Shocktrepet, if he's able to cut down the refineries of BikeRush, that may be almost as good as killing off the harvesters themselves. Unfortunately for Shocktrepet, he's going to be taking a big volley from those stealth tanks on the front line. He's going to be losing 1 Devastator warship, a second one taking a lot of damage. It will go down. Barely gets eliminated by that stealth tank there, and still all of the harvesters, all of the refineries of BikeRushOwnz, they stand strong. They have been untouched by the forces of Shocktrepet, and that's partially due to the double disruption tower that BikeRush has going on. He had one earlier, it got cleaned up. He had another one already planted as backup, and now a second one as well. That double stealth field just creates so many problems for your artillery, not being able to see what they're supposed to be firing at, and it really limits your targets and limits your ability to cut down your opponent's infrastructure at a time when you want to be getting tons and tons of free shots off. These SAM sites, even in range, I mean, the Devastator warships are getting constant repairs, but still those SAM sites targeting down those Devastator warships from the safety of BikeRush's base is not a good feeling for... that storm column doesn't get the kill. That is not a good feeling for Shocktrepet. Finally, those shock troopers get the kill, and those 2 stealth tanks have been killed off. I don't think we saw the first one go down, but I'm pretty sure it got eliminated. This is a lot of avatars coming out from BikeRushOwnz. 9 or 10 avatars, no, maybe even 12 avatars in total, and he's just going to push forward. Rocket squads on the ground to deal with the packs and the Devastator warships, but the avatars are going to be chewing through everything else on the ground. This is maybe 4 tripods here with an engineer to recapture one of the husks, but that is not enough firepower versus all of the avatars of BikeRushOwnz. And BikeRushOwnz doesn't have a huge answer to the air army, but these SAM sites are close enough that they can actually directly hit the air forces of Shocktrepet, while the lasers of the avatars just melt everything on the ground. Goodbye gravity stabilizer, as I think that'll be the next target for BikeRushOwnz. And now the signal transmitter on the front line, so costly and so exposed, as BikeRushOwnz doesn't actually have enough to push any further forward. His avatar numbers have somewhat disappeared, as he's only got 5 left, somewhat surprisingly. The rest of them are just going down. I mean, there are 5 husks here on the ground. But, I guess it was the storm columns? I don't know that the Devastator warships were getting that many shots. Maybe it was the Devastator warships that getting good shots in. Engineers coming out for Shocktrepet, but will he be able to actually claim any of the husks? The answer is no, as BikeRushOwnz still pushing further forward, but does he have enough firepower to work through the air army? I thought he did initially, but the answer was actually no. The stealth tank's now going to be showing up for BikeRush. 3 stealth tanks getting some great shots off on the planetary assault carriers, but not enough to clean it up. Yes, it is enough to clean it up, as the 3 stealth tanks all survive and they all escape, even cleaning up an additional harvester. And Shocktrepet is almost out of cash. He's got a little bit backwards at this expansion, having lost so many harvesters at that location earlier. It looks like he never actually resaturated that field, and that may be a bit of a weak spot in his economy, is that 3rd field, the backwards field. He's going to try a different angle, potentially working with the water, or I guess the coastline there, to try and get some extra shots off. But once again, he's got limited things that he can actually shoot at with all of his air forces. 3 stealth tanks now going to be hunting harvesters, and this is one of those things that can be very difficult for the player with the slower moving army to deal with. He's going to drop down either shock troopers or descents to try and deal with these stealth tanks. And 1 stealth tank actually does go down, trading out a stealth tank for a harvester. Not necessarily worth it. Although, yeah, no, actually there are more than enough harvesters. So killing 1 harvester this late in the game when there's so little Tiberium to actually be harvested, you need like maybe 2 on this field and 2 on this field. So you don't actually need very many harvesters in the big scheme of things. Maybe 1 on this field as well. But those are numbers that Shocktrepet has. There's 1 disruption tower going down, and the one nice thing about the Devastator warships, even though they can't see anything, the units that they can see and attack, they often do splash buildings, and they do some pretty darn good splash damage. Eventually capturing that Tiberium spike, I think BikeRushOwnz maybe lost a couple of engineers to those buzzers, and decided to just fly over the engineer instead of making the engineer run the long way. Avatar's getting healed up. A lot of these survivors from that previous gigantic battle, and once again BikeRushOwnz packing along his harvesters, and he may legitimately be bringing these harvesters along just to absorb a couple of shots from this army of Shocktrepet. But Shocktrepet, his best plan may actually be to try and fight with the help of base defenses instead of trying to meet BikeRush in the open field of battle. BikeRush with almost a wall of units getting broken up a little bit by the buildings here. The harvesters now on the front line. They're absorbing damage, but can BikeRush do the damage behind that? Giant stasis locking down a big section of his army, but can Shocktrepet actually close in and kill off the section of army that is killable? Stealth tank going down in the north, tripods going down, but avatars being eliminated as well, and I think the numbers are still on the side of BikeRush, just barely. It's like 2 or 3 avatars to 1 or 2 tripods, and now the stasis wears off. The rocket squad's getting some phenomenal shots, going even heroic, as this guy here has done some impressive damage, and Shocktrepet has been defeated. What was the final score? I don't know, but that is the end of the replays. BikeRushOwnz ends up winning it all. The Marching Forward tournament put on by Big Mole, a.k.a. Onk Onk. I don't know if that's how you pronounce that guy's name, but that will do it for this game, for this series. Sorry about the missing replays. I'm as disappointed as you are. I don't like missing out on games in that kind of a way, but at least we got a pretty solid match to end up on, and all of the matches overall were pretty good. So a good day of games nonetheless, and there are a bunch of other replays from this event that I'm maybe going to get to in the future, but not necessarily. There are a bunch of replays. They're not well organized, and the bracket isn't apparent, so maybe we'll see more from this event, maybe not. Anyways, that will do it for this game, for this series. BikeRushOwnz is your champion, and this is Sybert signing out.